Three coins, three incredible stories, and one jaw-dropping price tag that will leave you stunned. From a Jefferson nickel to a Washington quarter, and finally the New Mexico State quarter, each of these coins hides an error that transformed pocket change into life-changing treasure. In this episode, we uncover how one of these rare U.S. coins shocked the collecting world when it sold for an unbelievable $395,000. Stay tuned. You won't believe what could still be hiding in your change. The Jefferson nickel is one of those coins that seems so common, so ordinary, that most people don't even think twice about it. Since its introduction in 1938, it has been in the pockets, purses, and drawers of millions of Americans. But what if I told you that a Jefferson nickel, a simple 5-cent coin that most people ignore, could be worth more than a brand new luxury car, more than a down payment on a house, and in some cases more than an entire home itself? That's exactly the case with certain rare and dramatic era coins from 1964, one of the most fascinating years in the history of the nickel. And in this story, we're going to dive deep into the tale of the 1964 Jefferson nickel era coins, some of which have shocked the numismatic world by selling for staggering amounts between $44,000 and a jaw-dropping $395,000. Appreciate why the 1964 nickel is so important? Let's first step back into the early 1960s. The U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to produce enough coins for a booming economy. The nation's population was growing, the post-war baby boom was in full swing, and demand for everyday coinage was enormous. In 1964 alone, the mint struck over 1 billion Jefferson nickels, making it one of the highest mintage years in the entire series. On the surface, that would make you think 1964 nickels are incredibly common, and in general they are. But it is precisely in years of high production, when the pressure on mint workers and machinery is greatest, that errors are more likely to slip through. And when they do, collectors decades later find themselves chasing down these rare mistakes like hidden treasures. The design of the Jefferson nickel in 1964 remained the same as it had been since 1938. Felix Schlag's portrait of Thomas Jefferson graced the obverse, with the inscriptions "In God We Trust, Liberty" in the date. The reverse showed Monticello, Jefferson's iconic home in Virginia, along with the words "E Pluribus Unum," United States of America, and 5 cents. Nothing unusual at first glance. But in the midst of this huge production year, the mint produced a variety of error coins that today stand out as some of the most desirable in modern numismatics. One of the most dramatic and valuable errors from 1964 is the double die. On certain examples, doubling can be clearly seen on the inscriptions, particularly in the word liberty and sometimes in the date. These double dies occur when a working die that strikes the coin shifts slightly during the hubbing process, causing the design to be impressed twice at slightly different angles. The result is lettering and numbers that look like they have a shadow or a second set of lines. For collectors, double dies are among the most exciting errors because they are part of the coin's design itself, not just a random strike issue. And the 1964 double die Jefferson nickel is one of the boldest and most striking of them all. Another type of 1964 nickel error that excites collectors is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank is not properly centered in the press during striking. Instead of a perfectly round coin with the design neatly in place, you get a coin where part of the design is cut off and the rest is shifted dramatically to one side. The more off-center the strike, the rarer and more valuable the coin, especially if the date is still visible, which confirms it is indeed a 1964 issue. Some 1964 nickels with extreme off-center strikes have sold for tens of thousands of dollars. Then there are broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the collar that normally holds it in shape. A broad-struck 1964 nickel appears stretched out, wider and flatter than a normal coin. Clip planchets are another fascinating variety, where a portion of the coin's metal blank was missing before the strike, leaving the finished coin with a curved cutout. Both of these error types attract collector interest and can be worth thousands in higher grades. But the most famous and valuable of all 1964 nickel errors may be those known as transitional or wrong planchet errors. Because 1964 was right at the cusp of major changes in U.S. coinage, particularly with the removal of silver from dimes, quarters, and half dollars, some nickels were accidentally struck on planchets intended for other coins. Imagine holding a 1964 nickel that was mistakenly struck on a silver dime planchet, or a smaller or lighter blank that should have been used for another denomination. These mistakes are incredibly rare, but when they surface, they become the stuff of legend. At major auctions, Examples like this have fetched extraordinary sums, with some sales climbing into the $300,000 range. And that brings us to the most jaw-dropping part of the 1964 Jefferson nickel story. In one high-profile auction, a pristine example of a rare 1964 nickel error sold for an unbelievable $395,000. Think about that. A coin worth 5 cents at the time of issue transformed into nearly $400,000 in value. Even more common errors from that year, when certified by major grading companies in mint state condition, have sold for between $44,000 and $100,000, depending on the type and severity of the error. Condition, as always, plays a massive role in value. A heavily circulated 1964 error nickel might only fetch a few $1,000s, which is still an incredible return for 5 cents. But an uncirculated, mint state example certified by PCGS or NGC, especially one with a high grade like MS65 or MS66, is what drives those headline-grabbing auction results. Collectors know how rare it is for an error coin to survive in such pristine condition, and they're willing to pay staggering amounts to own one. Now, imagine the thrill of discovery. Picture this. You're going through an old jar of coins left behind by a grandparent, or maybe you're sorting through pocket change from years ago. You pick up a nickel from 1964 and notice something looks off. Maybe the lettering looks doubled. Maybe the coin is oddly shaped, or perhaps it feels lighter than usual. You take a closer look, compare it with a normal nickel, and realize you might be holding one of the rarest Jefferson nickels ever struck. That 5-cent piece, ignored for decades, could be worth tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. Stories like this are what keep collectors searching and dreaming. The 1964 nickel also carries with it a piece of American history. It represents the last year before the mint mark was removed from nickels as part of the broader coinage changes in the mid-1960s. It was struck in staggering numbers during a time when Americans were hoarding silver coins, creating coin shortages that pressured the mint like never before. In a way, the 1964 nickel is both ordinary and extraordinary, a coin that millions of people handle daily, but a coin that, when struck with an error, can become one of the most valuable pieces in modern coinage. Collectors often say that the beauty of this hobby is that treasures can hide in plain sight. The 1964 Jefferson nickel is proof of that. It's proof that even in the most common of coins, there can be something rare, something special, something worth life-changing amounts of money to the next time you see a 1964 nickel, don't just toss it aside as pocket change. Take a closer look. Check the lettering, examine the strike, weigh it carefully. Because what seems like a simple 5-cent coin might just be one of the most valuable error coins ever discovered, worth anywhere from $44,000 to an incredible $395,000 at auction. And that, more than anything, shows why coin collecting remains one of the most exciting and rewarding hobbies in the world. The Washington quarter dollar is one of the most recognizable coins in American history. For generations, it has been an everyday piece of currency, passed between hands in grocery stores, gas stations, vending machines, and parking meters. Introduced in 1932 to honor the 200th birthday of George Washington, the quarter has always carried a certain sense of dignity, but for most people, it is simply worth 25 cents. However, collectors know that not all quarters are created equal, and sometimes an error at the mint can transform this ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Few years demonstrate this truth more clearly than 1978, a year when several rare errors appeared on the Washington quarter, turning a coin most people never think twice about into one worth tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. In today's story, we're going to explore the fascinating tale of the 1978 Washington quarter dollar error coins, including how one error coin shocked the world when it sold for a staggering $285,000 at auction. To understand why 1978 quarters are so intriguing, let's first step back into the late 1970s. This was a transitional time for American coinage. The country was dealing with inflation, the dollar was losing some of its purchasing power, and the bicentennial quarter design, with its famous drummer boy reverse, had ended just 2 years earlier in 1976. By 1978, the mint had returned to the traditional Washington obverse and the heraldic eagle reverse. The obverse design still featured John Flanagan profile of George Washington, with the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date. On the reverse, the eagle perched proudly with outstretched wings, holding arrows and olive branches, a design that had been used since the 1930s. Billions of quarters were struck that year, with production split between the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. With so many coins produced, you would expect them to be perfectly ordinary. But as often happens in years of high production, errors slipped through, and those mistakes are what make certain 1978 quarters so valuable today. Among the most sought-after errors of the 1978 quarter are double dies. A double die occurs when the die that strikes the coin is impressed incorrectly, causing elements of the design to appear doubled. On 1978 quarters, some examples show dramatic doubling on the inscriptions "Liberty" and "In God We Trust." Others have doubling visible on the date itself. Collectors love double die errors because they are part of the die's design, not random damage. That means every coin struck with that die carries the same doubling. For the 1978 Washington quarter, bold double die varieties have sold for impressive sums, with some examples fetching well over $60,000 depending on grade. Another famous error type for 1978 is the off-center strike. When a blank planchet is not properly seated in the coining press, the resulting coin can have part of its design cut off. The more off-center the strike, the more dramatic and valuable the error becomes. A 1978 quarter that is off-center by 50% or more, especially one where the date remains visible, can be worth thousands or even tens of thousands. Collectors prize these mistakes for their dramatic appearance, as they clearly show something went wrong at the mint. But the real heavy hitters in the world of 1978 Washington quarter errors are transitional and wrong planchet errors. Imagine finding a 1978 quarter that was accidentally struck on a planchet mint for a different coin. These wrong planchet strikes are extremely rare, but they have happened. In some cases, quarters were struck on planchets intended for nickels or dimes, resulting in undersized coins that immediately look odd to anyone who notices them. In even rarer cases, quarters were struck on foreign planchets, since the U.S. Mint was contracted to produce coins for other countries at the time. These wrong planchet 1978 quarters can fetch incredible sums at auction, often starting in the tens of thousands. The most dramatic and valuable 1978 quarter errors, however, are the ones that combine rarity with pristine condition. At major auctions, high-grade examples of 1978 Washington quarter errors have shocked even veteran collectors. One particularly rare double die variety in superb mint state condition stunned the numismatic world when it sold for an unbelievable $285,000. Think about that for a moment. What was originally worth just 25 cents, a coin that could have been used in a payphone or slipped into a gumball machine, ended up being worth more than many luxury cars and even some houses. That kind of story is exactly what makes coin collecting so exciting. Other examples of 1978 quarter errors, while not reaching those heights, have still brought impressive results. Depending on the type of error and the condition of the coin, collectors have paid anywhere from $62,000 to well into six figures for these rare pieces. And while the most famous sales make headlines, even less dramatic errors, like off-center strikes or clip planchets, can command thousands if certified by grading companies such as PCGS or NGC. Condition, as always, plays a critical role. Coins graded in mint state, particularly MS-65 or higher, are the ones that attract the most attention and the highest bids. A heavily circulated 1978 quarter with an error might still be valuable, but it will never reach the staggering prices of those pristine mint state examples. Collectors want coins that not only showcase the error, but also have the luster and sharp details of a coin fresh from the mint. What makes the 1978 quarter error story even more compelling is the possibility of discovery. Many of these coins are still out there, hiding in plain sight in old coin jars, collections, or even pocket change. Imagine the thrill of finding one yourself. You pick up a 1978 quarter, look closely, and notice the date or lettering looks doubled. Or maybe you see that the design is off-center. You weigh the coin and realize it feels lighter or heavier than usual, possibly struck on the wrong planchet. That's when it hits you. This could be one of those rare error coins worth tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The Washington quarter has always carried symbolic weight, honoring the first president of the United States and serving as a piece of national identity. But when combined with a mint error, it transforms from a common coin into a rare and valuable treasure. The 1978 quarter error coins remind us that even in the most ordinary things, there can be extraordinary value. The next time you come across a 1978 Washington quarter, don't just toss it in a drawer or spend it without a thought. Take a moment to look closely. Check the lettering for doubling. Look at the strike to see if it's centered. Compare the weight against a normal quarter, because what looks like just another coin might be one of the most valuable error coins ever discovered. And as history has shown, a 1978 Washington quarter error can be worth anywhere from $62,000 to an incredible $285,000 at auction. That's the kind of hidden fortune that keeps collectors searching and proves that treasures really can be hiding in plain sight. In 2008, the United States Mint introduced the New Mexico State Quarter as part of the 50 State Quarters program, a massive initiative that ran from 1999 to 2008, honoring each state with a unique design on the reverse of the quarter. The program captured the imagination of millions of Americans, young and old, and for many, it was their first taste of coin collecting. The New Mexico Quarter was one of the last in the series, released in the final year, and while most of these coins entered circulation as perfectly ordinary 25-cent pieces, a few slipped out of the mint with mistakes that would later shock collectors. Those errors transformed what should have been a common pocket change coin into a treasure worth tens of thousands of dollars, with some examples selling for as much as $110,000 at auction. The design of the 2008 New Mexico State Quarter reflects the state's history, culture, and geography. On the obverse, as with all state quarters, we see John Flanagan portrait of George Washington, along with the inscriptions Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date. The mint mark indicates where the coin was struck, Philadelphia, Denver, or San Francisco for proof versions. On the reverse, the design chosen by the state depicts the Zia sun symbol, a sacred emblem from the Zia Pueblo people, centered over a map outline of New Mexico. Surrounding the design are the inscriptions New Mexico, Land of Enchantment, and the year 1912, the year New Mexico became a state. It is a striking, symbolic design that connects to the rich history of the state. And when these coins were released, many New Mexicans and collectors alike were proud to see it circulating across the nation. But even in such a well-prepared program, mistakes happened. The U.S. Mint was producing millions upon millions of coins at an incredible pace. And in the case of the New Mexico Quarter, certain errors slipped through. These errors were not intentional. They were the product of the minting process, where dies are created, planchets are fed, and strikes occur with immense pressure. An error could mean doubling, a misaligned strike, or even the wrong planchet being used. And for collectors, these mistakes are what transform a coin from a curiosity into a highly sought-after rarity. One of the most famous types of errors that appeared on the 2008 New Mexico Quarter was the double die. In this error, elements of the design appeared doubled due to a misalignment in the die itself. Collectors who have studied New Mexico Quarters report that doubling can sometimes be found on the inscriptions New Mexico or Land of Enchantment. In some dramatic cases, the Zia sun symbol itself shows signs of doubling, giving the coin a unique and instantly noticeable appearance. A double die New Mexico Quarter in high mint state condition has been valued by collectors at tens of thousands of dollars, with rare, sharply struck examples climbing into six-figure territory. Another highly collectible error type from this coin is the off-center strike. When a coin blank is not perfectly aligned within the press, the resulting strike will be shifted, leaving part of the design missing or stretched across the planchet. The more dramatic the off-center strike, the more valuable the coin becomes. For New Mexico Quarters, an off-center strike of more than 40% with the date still visible can easily bring in thousands of dollars. Combine that with a high mint state grade, and suddenly you're looking at a coin worth upwards of $17,000 or more. There are also examples of 2008 New Mexico Quarter struck on wrong planchets. This type of error happens when a blank intended for another coin, such as a dime or foreign denomination, accidentally ends up in the coining press. Imagine a New Mexico Quarter design struck on a dime-sized planchet. It looks smaller, lighter, and completely out of place. Wrong planchet errors are exceptionally rare, and when authenticated, they almost always command five-figure prices at auction. Some of these wrong planchet strikes have been reported to sell between $40,000 and $100,000, depending on their condition and rarity. What makes the New Mexico Quarter even more fascinating to collectors is that these errors occurred during the final year of the 50 State Quarters program. That means there was already an elevated level of excitement and interest in the series, and any errors from that year carried an extra sense of importance. Collectors who had been building state quarter sets for nearly a decade suddenly had their eyes on New Mexico, and when reports of valuable errors started surfacing, Demand skyrocketed. One particular New Mexico quarter error drew national attention when it crossed the auction block and sold for an astonishing $110,000. This coin featured a rare and dramatic double die error, with crisp, unmistakable doubling on the Zia sun symbol and surrounding inscriptions. In pristine mint state condition, it became one of the most valuable coins of the entire state quarter program, stunning collectors and investors alike. That sale proved that even modern coins, produced in massive numbers, could still harbor extraordinary rarities worth more than many people's annual income. For most people, finding one of these rare error coins might seem impossible, but the truth is they're still out there. Many New Mexico quarters entered circulation, and while most were ordinary, error examples could easily have been spent without notice. They might be sitting in coin jars, tucked away in old collections, or even hiding in pocket change. Stories abound of collectors and casual searchers who, upon closer inspection, discovered something unusual about a coin they already had. It is this possibility that keeps the hunt alive and makes modern coin errors so exciting. Collectors who want to confirm whether their 2008 New Mexico quarter might be valuable should look closely at the details. Magnification can reveal doubling in the inscriptions or Zia symbol. Off-center strikes are often visible to the naked eye, as are clipped planchets, where part of the blank was missing before the coin was struck. Wrong planchet strikes are usually evident by size and weight, so weighing a suspicious coin against the standard quarter weight can be a quick way to detect something unusual. Certification is another important step. Professional grading services like PCGS and NGC not only authenticate error coins, but also assign grades that significantly affect value. A rare error in a circulated condition might still bring in thousands, but the same error in mint state, especially MS65 or higher, can multiply in value many times over. That's why the most famous New Mexico quarter errors, the ones selling for between $17,000 and $110,000, are almost always certified by one of the top grading companies. The 2008 New Mexico State quarter tells us more than just the story of a coin. It reminds us of the unpredictability of minting, the joy of discovery, and the thrill of knowing that treasures can still be hiding in something as ordinary as a quarter. When you think about it, the coin itself was meant to honor a state rich with culture, history, and natural beauty, and by sheer chance, some of those coins ended up becoming part of numismatic history, as well as so imagine this. You're holding a New Mexico quarter in your hand. At first glance, it looks like any other, but then you notice something. Maybe the lettering looks doubled, maybe the strike seems off-center, maybe it feels too light or too small. Suddenly, you realize this might not be an ordinary coin at all. You take a closer look, you do your research, and before long you learn that this 25-cent piece could be worth more than $50,000, or maybe even up to $110,000. That's the kind of life-changing discovery that keeps collectors and treasure hunters searching every day. The 2008 New Mexico State quarter may have been one of the last entries in the 50-state quarters program, but for collectors, it represents one of the most exciting opportunities in modern U.S. coinage. From double dies to off-center strikes to wrong planchet errors, these coins prove that even in the era of mass production, mistakes can happen, and those mistakes can turn a common coin into a fortune. And, as history has shown, a single error coin from this series has sold for as much as $110,000, forever securing its place among the most valuable modern U.S. coins.